I'm James Lane, and if you're familiar with this Belair wagon project, you'll know after all that prep work, all that rust repair to the inner and outer rockers, that I finally have my one-piece floor pan section in. Now it's taken a lot of time and effort to get to the point where I'm ready to top coat this new floor pan section, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. Now that we have the floor pan in, it's time to do a little bit of prep work before we start spraying any paint. And as you can see, I've got grind shavings, dirt, and this stuff all over the entire floor pan here. And I'm going to need to get that cleaned up because prep work is key to any kind of paint job or anything like that. Now, even though you're not going to see this, it's going to be underneath the carpet, I do still want it to look good. And a few other little things that I needed to do. I've got my holes drilled for my floor pan plugs, my drain plugs. So we need to get all this cleaned up so we can get in here and scuff this pan before we spray it. So we got this thing all masked up. We got the floor pan all sanded down and all wiped down and clean. And the next step is to mix up some primer. And here's the primer that we're going to be using on the floor. This is Epoxy Primer. It's a 2-part primer made by PPG, Shopline brand. And we're going to use this on top of the floor and on the bottom. But we're going to spray this first, and then we're going to come back on top of it with this. And this is Shopline Urethane Single Stage. Now this is actually a flattened red oxide, and what this will do is this actually will simulate the factory red oxide primer that would have been on the floor pan from the factory, but with this being a urethane single stage, this will hold up way better. So the epoxy's laid down, and I've already went on top of this and put in the seam sealer. If you can see it, it's black seam sealer, and it's probably kind of hard to see. And the seam sealer that I used was this SEM black seam sealer. It seems to work pretty good. It says 5 to 10 minute work time, and you got to stay on that because if you don't, it'll start hardening up. Now this stuff's ready to be painted after you put it down, and I wanted to show you a little trick. What you want to do is lay down a bead, maybe 1/4 of an inch wide, and take your paint stick, and after you've laid it down, just kind of drag it through there. And if you get real close, you can kind of see it almost kind of gives a nice kind of brush appearance without using a brush, and it looks pretty good. So that's one of the tips for doing some of the seam sealer. So now this is already flashed off. It's time for me to go ahead and lay down my red oxide on top of this. And as I showed you before, here's our red oxide single stage. Now this is a single stage urethane. Basically what it is, it's a base coat with a clear coat already mixed in, and this is what we're going to put on top of the floor. So this is a Volkswagen color red oxide, and I've actually had them add a flattening agent into the paint, and that'll give us a nice matte finish that'll simulate the factory primer. So here it is with the final coat of red oxide on, and as you can see, it looks really good. Now this paint should gloss back a little bit. We're just going to have to give it some time to dry and do its thing, but it really turned out pretty good. And here's the floor pan the next day. As you can see, the paint has glossed back and it has a very nice satin sheen to it. And that's exactly the look that I was going for. This gives the appearance of freshly sprayed red oxide primer. So now that we've got the top side of this floor pan finished, it's time to start working on the bottom side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe this thing down with wax and grease remover, and we're going to sand it down and get it ready for primer. floor pan's all scuffed and wiped down, and I've got all the holes taped up. So the next step is to go mix up some primer. Just like the top side of the floor, we're going to use this Shopline black epoxy primer. It mixes 2 to 1. Now this stuff has a 72-hour top coat window, so I'm going to spray this and come back tomorrow and spray the top coat. So got a couple coats of epoxy primer on, and I'm going to let this dry overnight, and I'm going to come back and top coat it tomorrow. So this is what we're going to use to top coat the bottom side of the floor pan with. Now this is SEM Rocket. It's a Bedliner kit. It comes with 4 quarts, and as you can see, this one is tintable. And just like the top side of the floor pan, we're going to mix in this red oxide, and we're going to have a nice red oxide durable finish on the bottom side, just like we do on the top side. So this is the Bedliner kit setup. It comes with this undercoating gun, and as you can see, I already added my inline dryer and my air pressure regulator. And this is the actual Bedliner itself here in this bottle. And what you do is, since this is tintable, you mix 3 ounces of your base coat in there and shake it up real good. And then this is your catalyst. You add 8 ounces of that to this bottle, shake it up for a few minutes, then you attach it to this gun, and then you can go to town spraying. So I've got everything masked off, and it's about time to spray some bed coating. So here it is, it's all nice and coated, and this is nice, a nice thick coating, and this should help provide years of protection to the bottom side of the car. And I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Now I did end up spraying that entire kit, which is 4 quarts. This stuff, it just really for some reason did not cover very well. I couldn't get it to cover. You're supposed to do light coats. This is actually the look that I was going for. You can change the air pressure and your distance to kind of get a certain texture, and this is the exact texture that I was going for. So I'm really happy. The only thing I'm not sure about, I'm not sure if this is going to be glossy or if it's going to flatten out and have a little sheen, kind of like the top side of the floor pan. We'll just have to let it dry and see. And here is the coating the next day. It's starting to harden up, and as you can see, it's kind of glossed back a little bit. It has that nice like satin sheen to it. It looks really good. I'm really happy, really happy with the way this turned out. I don't think it could have turned out any better. So now that we got this front half done, we can move on and concentrate on the back half of the car. So as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos on my other projects. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you click that subscribe button, click the bell so you'll get the notifications. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram.